There was a time in America when people believed hard work actually led somewhere. They said, work hard, stay honest, save your money, do the right thing. That was the deal. Somewhere along the line, though, millions of Americans started quietly asking the same question. What happened to the payoff?
We can live the dream. We can still believe. Cause Boss Man is on the
Boss Man here on the air with you, where we have the conversations people think about in private. We talk about news, life, and mostly cover the American dream for people still trying to build a life that means something. We are broadcasting for the American dream. Now, people are working harder and longer than ever, while at the same time feeling further and further behind than ever. Young couples are delaying marriage and children because life got too expensive. Middle aged Americans are retiring early, in some cases, restarting careers at 50. And an entire generation is beginning to wonder if the American dream still exists or if it became a subscription service for the wealthy. In a world built around instant gratification, social media illusions, and financial pressures, what does success even look like anymore? The American dream? Is it dead or has it just been financed? You tell me your thoughts in the comments. It's not hard to live life day by day, week by week, and feel like the goals you've set and the plans you've made are becoming further and further out of reach. And even Dave Ramsey recently admitted something on Fox News that hit a nerve with millions of Americans. And he said young people today feel boxed out of home ownership.
Dave Ramsey, Dave, it's great to have you here. There's so much to talk about here. Let's start with these first-time home buyers. Back in 1990, they were 30 years old. In 2025, the average age of a first-time home buyer is 40 years old. What do you say to that group that is struggling to get together with that down payment?
Well, I'm afraid I have to tell you the truth, and that is that corporate America has screwed you. Car debt is at an all-time high. The car companies have now got you signing up for $1,200 car payments. Student loan debt is at an all-time high. And this is Gen Z and millennials. And of course, credit card debt, thank you to the big banks, is at an all-time high. When you're drowning in personal debt, you can't afford to buy a freaking house. One of the other things that's pushed the age from 30 to 40 is we're still recovering from this huge spike in house prices following COVID. We had the most unrealistic real estate market in 100 years following COVID. And look at the curve on house prices across America during that period of time. And it didn't slow down because now we've got a shortage of inventory.
That made me one of the most honest descriptions of what in modern America we've heard in a long time. Because for a growing number of people, it's not that they don't want the American dream. It's that the entry fee suddenly feels impossible. And when people begin to feel locked out of their future, that's when frustration starts replacing optimism. Now, I'm going to speak one-on-one here for just a moment. I'll make this personal because I've actually lived through part of this myself, what he refers to. Back in 2003, I was doing what Americans were told to do. Good income, steady work, two people working, trying hard to build a future. Because even in 2003, you needed two incomes in a household to make it work. We bought our first home right as the mortgage crisis was quietly starting to bake beneath our feet. But what most ordinary people didn't understand that back then was the mortgage world had basically turned into what was known to be the Wild West. Banks were handing out interest-only loans that looked affordable at first, until the payments later exploded. Qualifications were so loose, people barely had necessity to prove income, assets, or even employment. Why did they do that? They did it because lenders weren't planning to keep those loans. They were planning to sell them off to Wall Street investors, while everybody assumed the housing prices would rise forever. We all know what happened to that housing crisis. So when people ask why some Americans no longer trust the system the way they once did, I'm part of the answer. My housing costs almost doubled overnight. So I want to take this time and ask you something personal. Were you hit by that 2008 housing crash? Did you lose a home? Did you watch your parents lose one? Did your marriage, your career, your savings, or your confidence in the future take a hit because of what happened back then? Because sometimes people talk about 2008 like it was just a financial event. But for a lot of people, like me, it changed how people trusted banks, trusted paperwork, how they trusted advice. In a lot of cases, even trusted their own judgment. And that brings us to inflation. You know, that pesky little force most people feel, but feel like we can control? In a recent conversation with Jordan Peterson, Pierre Poilievre made a point that fits this discussion perfectly.
So that's the inflationary problem.
Yes.
Now, the problem with inflation, there's many problems with inflation, but one of them is that it particularly punishes people who are thrifty and who save.
Inflation is the single most immoral tax for so many reasons. One, it takes from savers and people who are trying to be responsible, thus making it impossible to be responsible.
Right.
It's like Milton Friedman was asked, what would you do with your money in times of inflation? He said, spend it.
Right.
Like the first thing you want to do when inflation is out of control is to make sure you get rid of this thing that's losing its value. The second reason it's immoral is it takes from the poor, because the poorest people they do not have the ability to buy inflation-proof assets like gold and real estate and fancy watches and art collections and fancy wines and things.
So the socialist policies that provide goods and services to Canadians, let's say, or denizens of other countries by printing money actually punish the poor brutally.
Oh, absolutely.
In consequence of the inflation that they generate.
People no longer trust the old models. Because for generations, Americans were taught responsibility was the path forward. Work hard, save your money, delay gratification, put off big plans. By that, I mean, put off the things you could afford, build stability over time. See, inflation changes the entire equation. Why? Because inflation punishes people trying to be responsible while rewarding those already holding assets, debt leverage, and wealth. And when people start realizing that the rules they followed no longer produce the outcome that they were promised, frustration begins replacing faith in the systems itself.
Oh, hi, sweetie. No, I'm a little stressed right now.
And maybe that's part of why so many people today feel like they're running faster, while somehow shallowly falling further and further behind. The dollar simply does not stretch the way it once did. What makes inflation so dangerous isn't just higher prices. It's the feeling that no matter how disciplined or responsible you become, the finish line keeps moving further and further down the line. Business Insider reported that housing prices in many parts of America have risen far faster than wages, making home ownership increasingly difficult for younger Americans. So for millions of Americans, the issue isn't wanting a home, it's surviving long enough to afford one. It wasn't that long ago when one income could support the dream of home ownership. If you're old enough, you remember it. It once was a thing. But today, two incomes are often the norm. And for many families, even that isn't enough. The people hurt most by inflation aren't the wealthy, the saver, the young family, the retiree, the worker whose paycheck no longer reaches the end of the month. And today, people are looking at inflation, housing prices, and debt, and the cost of simply becoming an adult. And they're asking the same question: am I building a future, or am I just renting survival 1 month at a time? Help me build this conversation, this channel, to a place where more people can chime in and help others that may be similarly stuck, like we're talking about here today. Put your story in the comments, whether it was 2008, inflation, housing, debt, or just the slow realization that the old formula stopped working. Somebody watching may need to know what they weren't being told back then, and that now they're not the only one. Maybe that's where we land today. Maybe that American dream that everybody talks about, maybe it isn't truly dead. Maybe it's trapped behind some monthly payments scandal or something, waiting for somebody honest to call it out and call it for what it is. Because I'll stand right here and tell you, a dream you can only afford with debt, it's not freedom. It's a contract with better marketing.